Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're tackling a giant Apple. And, we all see the quarterly reports, the massive profits.
Right.
But what if there's something else going on? A deeper, sort of cyclical pattern to Apple's history that actually predicts when they hit these almost existential crises.
That's the core of what we're digging into today. We're looking at sources that use a pretty unconventional framework.
Highly unconventional.
It connects Apple's most painful moments, specifically that near collapse in 1997, to this underlying symbolic structure from their founding date. The mission here is to see if that same structure can tell us something about the challenges they're facing right now, leading up to 2026.
Okay, and this all comes down to an idea our sources call Apple's thought engine.
Exactly. And that engine is defined by a very specific placement of Mercury at 12 degrees of Aries, right on top of the sun, from their founding on April 1st, 1976. This, we're told, is the source of that famous or infamous Apple uncompromising point of view.
But the crisis comes from a different force, Saturn.
Yes, Saturn, the symbol of limits, of accountability. We're going to look at what happened when that heavy constraining force crossed that exact point in 1997 and, crucially, why that same cycle is set to repeat in the summer of 2026. It suggests another mandatory strategic purge is on the way.
Okay, so let's unpack this core identity first, this Mercury placement. You said it represents technology, engineering, the mind of the company. So what does putting it in Aries actually mean in, real-world behavior?
It means innovation born from pure instinct. Aries is all about initiation, radical confidence. So you get this fusion of technology and decision-making with just boldness, decisive action.
It's that whole we know what you want before you do philosophy.
That's it, exactly. It's the confidence that lets you create the Mac or the iPod or the iPhone. It's a self-directed design impulse. And with the Sun Apple's creative identity right there with it, their thinking and their purpose were locked together from day one. A single, focused, and very uncompromising point of view.
But that same focus can cause problems. Right. It can lead to, confusion if it's not kept in check.
Precisely. And that brings us to 1997, the big crisis.
This is where it gets really juicy for me.
Yeah.
1997 was objectively Apple's lowest point. Everyone was predicting they'd go under. So how does this symbolic pressure from Saturn map onto what was actually happening on the ground?
Well, think of Saturn as the ultimate reality check. It symbolizes pressure, limits, accountability. When it makes contact with Apple's core mind, that Mercury, it forces the company to stop being confident and start being honest.
Honest about what works and what doesn't.
And what dead weight needs to be cut. It becomes a matter of survival.
Okay, but isn't that a bit of a conceptual leap? Bringing back Steve Jobs, promoting Joni Ive, weren't those just smart business decisions? Why attribute them to this symbolic cycle?
That's the critical question. The framework suggests that the external pressure, the Saturn pressure, made those smart decisions mandatory. They weren't just options on a whiteboard anymore. They were structural imperatives.
You had no choice.
You had no choice. Look at the reality in April 1997. The financial losses were massive. The product line was a sprawling mess. They were selling digital cameras, printers, everything.
And their big software project, Copland, was a complete failure.
A total failure. Developers were fleeing the platform. Gil Amelio's leadership was just falling apart. Morale was in the basement. It was maximum stress, hitting from every single angle, all at once.
Can't imagine what it was like to be an employee there. Just chaos.
Absolute chaos. The company's inventive mind had lost its focus, its discipline, and Saturn was demanding accountability for all of it.
So in that pressure cooker, what was the purge? What was the painful but necessary strategic move they were forced to make?
The purge was swift and pretty brutal once Jobs' influence really kicked in. Projects were just canceled wholesale. That confusing product line was slashed down to just 4 core computers.
Back to basics.
Completely. And the key structural shift was abandoning their failed in-house software and centering all engineering around the system they got from NXT. That, of course, became OS X.
So the pressure forced them to cut the fat and focus everything on a single strong foundation.
Yes. They were forced to get honest about who they were. That redefinition of their original Aries impulse laid the groundwork for the next 20 years. The iMac, OS X, the iPod, the iPhone. It all came from that moment of forced clarity.
Okay, so let's bring this to the present, or, the near future. Our sources say this same Saturn transit hits again in summer 2026. Now, by all financial measures, Apple is a fortress. They're incredibly robust.
Financially, yes.
But where are the strategic pressure points now? Where's the weakness that might force another purge?
Strategically, the symptoms of 1997 are kind of starting to reappear. The biggest pressures are one, a failure to lead in next-gen tech, and two, that same problem again, sprawl.
Let's talk about the tech lag first.
I mean, Apple is famously and very visibly lagging in the generative AI revolution. Google, Android, they're setting the pace. It's almost a mirror of the Copland failure in the 90s. A core technology engine is being questioned.
And the iPhone is still a cash cow, but there's no next iPhone on the horizon.
Exactly. The sources are clear on that. There is no new phone-level innovation on deck. And that brings us to the sprawl.
So if the sprawl in 97 was confusing computers and printers, what does it look like today?
It's in things like the services division, some parts of it, and these very high-cost non-core R&D projects. The sources point directly at monumental, non-performing investments. The big one everyone talks about is the Apple Car initiative.
Which has reportedly been curtailed.
Curtailed, exactly. And it looks like a textbook example of a huge capital sink that this 2026 transit might force them to eliminate completely just to get their focus back.
So the theory is when the structural pressure rise in 2026, Apple will be forced to cut these massive, high-profile distractions to refocus the entire company mind on, what? Winning the AI war.
Or risk serious consequences.
Yes.
If 1997 forced a culling to confront market reality, 2026 suggests another mandatory purge is coming. Accountability is coming for those sprawling, non-core projects that are bleeding resources and attention.
This has been absolutely fascinating. So the big takeaway for me is that understanding Apple isn't just about CEOs and product launches. It's about these cyclical moments where their core identity, that Mercury mindset, gets put under extreme pressure to restructure.
They were forced to be honest in 1997.
And it sounds like the time for honesty is coming around again.
It does. And that raises a really interesting question, something for you to think about. If the pressure of 1997 forced them to sacrifice a messy product line to focus everything on OS X and the iMac, what's the equivalent sacrificial lamb for 2026? Are they going to be forced to abandon years of investment in fringe areas like the car and totally restructure their engineering to go all in on a unified, focused AI operating system? The next 2 years will be very, very telling. Watch what gets cut.